Welcome back to the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show right here in your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.
And remember, our goal is always to guide you to personal and financial wellness.
Well, welcome to the Don and Gino Show in our new studio here, and you're going to hear me say that for just a little long, but we're very excited about our new studio. Lisa, Megan, and Furman did a great job of setting this up because we kind of changed things up after 8 years of doing radio and having the radio studio. Now we have the Don and Gino Show with great information. And Gino, I think our goal is still the same.
The goal's always been the same. It's to guide you to personal and financial wellness. And you say, well, isn't this a real estate show? Well, primarily it started off as that, but we found out that in order to have personal and financial wellness, you couldn't just have real estate. You needed to have so many other things. And our guest today, Lisa Odom, who's been with us many a time, is going to help us with that, because sometimes earning money isn't good enough. You have to learn how to preserve it and pass it down to future generations as well.
Well, what we've learned, the best thing about having the show is Gino and I learn a lot. And by learning all these
different secrets.
I know. All these facets of literally interviewing the best of the best we can find in the nation and locally. We put them all together on our YouTube channel. Go to donandgino.com. We interview these great people that always update us and inform us of stuff we usually don't have any clue on. And now we go, oh, we should be doing that too. So these professionals are professionals we personally use that help us with our financial and personal wellness. And Lisa Odom assists us with so many factors. So we're like, hey, come in and talk about that because we didn't know that. And thank goodness you're protecting us. So today, Lisa Odom with Pool and Shaftry is here to talk about something that all of us should know, especially if you're a business owner. It's called business succession planning. And most of you probably don't have anything to do with it. You're just running your business and say, I got this. But we brought in Lisa Odom here to help us and help you know what you don't know.
Yes. Well, thank you guys for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for being back.
I know. It's always good to be back.
Usually we're just in your office signing a lot of documents because you're helping us with all our stuff. We're like, more papers to sign? Yeah. But the best thing that we both agree on is that when we do go through the steps of what you say we need to do for either personal or business or estate planning and so forth, we always go, so glad I got that done. And it makes you feel so good. It's like brushing your teeth. You're like, I'm glad I did that.
Right, yeah.
But there's always more, isn't there? It's like pulling the string as you start to open Pandora's box and realize how much... and we started with the trust, right? If you're going to start with your very simple, do something.
Right.
If you do nothing else in life, start with the trust.
Right.
And then we've evolved into all this business succession planning and business planning and layers and layers of things that you could take care of to feel good.
Yeah, because you just have that little hashtag probate sucks.
Seriously, probate does suck.
Hashtag what if.
Well, actually, and it's not just probate. So you say something that's very true. Half the battle sometimes is just getting people in there to do their estate plan. Nobody wants to think about dying. It's scary. It's hard to believe it could happen. People just really live in a warped state of reality when really it's quite guaranteed that it's going to happen. I've never met anybody who's not going to die.
Yeah.
So,
None of us are getting out of this alive.
Right. Nobody's getting out of it alive. And I think one of the things that makes it such a struggle for us, so, we might get someone in on their estate plan and then they think, oh, wow, I've done everything. I have an advanced healthcare directive. So if I become sick, somebody can step in for me and make medical decisions. And now I have a power of attorney. So someone can step in and handle my financial matters if I'm incapacitated or unable to make decisions for whatever reason. And that does get you a lot of the way, but one of the things that we have found, especially as it's really hitting the hardest right now because baby boomers are getting so much closer to retirement age. Many of them are in retirement age. They're trying to pull out of their businesses. Maybe they're bringing their loved ones into the business, or maybe they're transitioning to a key employee or whatever. We're finding that while they might have done their estate planning for their actual person and their personal finances, they haven't actually considered what happens when they pass away or they become incapacitated in their business world. Now,
Which is probably where most of their wealth is.
which unfortunately for many, many, many of our entrepreneurial clients, that actually might be their largest asset. Is certainly the asset that they spent the most time on. As you guys know, entrepreneurs are the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into it is not.
Yeah, we get to take naps, right?
Occasionally, like the 4-hour over the night naps.
It's so funny because
yeah.
Taylor's like, I'm skipping the gym. I'm so tired. I really need 6 hours today.
Yeah,
I did that this morning.
It's pretty. I mean, I feel that every single day as well. So I get it. And unfortunately, when you have such a substantial amount of wealth in an asset like that, protecting that asset isn't as simple as just doing a trust and a power of attorney. It's more complicated. I mean, even if you think about it just in your basic terms, like a trustee, a lot of people pick their children to be the trustees of their trust, or maybe a parent or a good friend. Have we talked about whether this parent, friend, sister, brother, whoever has any experience running a business? I mean, that's a huge issue. So if you have a business, I mean, I have some clients who have, one client has 400 employees, for instance, and they're all across the country. His trustee is his mom. If your mom's the trustee, she has no experience running the business, so she's the one that's supposed to.
As an employee.
Right. Exactly. Well, and who is this person? This is the person who's going to be in
She
charge.
brought us cookies.
Right,
Yay.
exactly. Like there's no succession plan. There's nobody for the employees to know they can turn to. And maybe the business owner is thinking, well, I'm 45 years old. I'm not going to die. Well, I'm in a probate right now with a 50-year-old person who passed away with employees and a lot of mess that had to be cleaned up.
This stuff happens.
Of course.
Every day.
Exactly. And then...
there's crazy people that like to jump out of planes, swim with sharks, whatever else.
Motocross, drive race cars,
Yeah.
Or just drive
I have
on the
insurance
California
on him.
highway.
I just thought about that. We have insurance on each other, get kind of like a key
buy,
employee.
sell, yeah.
Yeah. But the only problem I just realized, he's on my healthcare directives. He might just say, pull the plug.
And could you blame him, really? Just kidding.
What's that? He goes, I own the business now.
Did you guys see that? We're going to segue a little bit, but I thought I saw a really funny meme on Facebook the other day. It said, my wife just surprised me with a trip to the Dominican Republic and a life insurance policy for $250,000.
Makes sense, actually. Don't drink from the mini bars right now.
Totally.
Yeah.
I was just there. One of the resorts. I was just there.
Oh, scary.
Anyway, we don't
There's
have
a perfect example. You don't know.
You
a healthy
don't
couple
know.
goes there, has some bug, and 2 days later, gone.
Right. And the most common thing is, well, we never thought that was going to happen. Well, that's amazing. Of course you never thought it was going to happen because there's no crystal ball. You don't get to know.
There is.
So-
it's
I
right
love that
there.
blinding flash sale. It's like, it's always the last place you look. Of course it is.
Exactly. But the problem is, if this is your most significant value, if your business is worth $5 million, or even if it's worth $2 million, don't you want your family to have that? That's where the blood, sweat, and tears went. That's where like for me, I think about it like when I didn't get to go to a child's recital or to a baseball game because I was working my tail off, I want to know that my kids are going to have something for
your hard work.
For my hard work. And so to give that up because I didn't plan, because there is a little bit of expense in planning, but in planning for your business succession, you have created a possible... You can create a million things. You could create a possible retirement plan. I mean, you could sell to a key employee who then pays you a certain amount of money each year to buy out your interest, and now you've annuitized your ownership.
We actually know someone who actually must have done a decent job because he passed away, and the partners still pay her a annual monthly salary.
We see this all the time, and
so they must have done a decent job of planning.
It's fantastic for the family. Yeah, if you do proper planning and you identify the right people.
As an owner, you're like, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
my family's taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, but there should have been some insurance, of course. Otherwise, they're having to pay. Otherwise, there's income going out for no work being done, so to speak.
Well, that's it. That's called your goodwill.
Yeah, depending on how you built the business. I mean, people ask us. You mentioned our insurance policies. Our insurance policies aren't for each other to become rich on the other person's insurance policy. It's so I can hire someone immediately to do what he does.
Absolutely. So it's key man insurance, really. But then there's also buy-sell insurance that if a lot of our business owners, when there's partnerships and we don't want to be, business partners with, I don't know if Don wants to be business partners with Nella. No offense, Nella. But I mean, I don't
She's
know.
tough.
But it's tough. I mean,
And she won't go to the post office.
Also, does Nella want to be business partners? Do you know, these are the kinds of things that we have to think about.
Nothing to do with our business.
Exactly.
Oh, no.
And this is a common thing. We see it all the time. Most of the time, if let's say a husband owns a business, wife is a stay-at-home mom, chances are she's been raising the kids. She's been busy doing that, and maybe she coaches or she does other things for the children. She might know nothing about the business, yet her husband passes away and she finds out he has an asset that's worth $20 million. And she assumed that it would die when he died because she didn't know that it was systemized and that it could be done, it could be sold, and it had a lot of value to be gleaned. And now what if she sells it as a fire sale for $3 million when she could have sold it for $20 million? I mean, there are so many issues that need to be considered, and so many of our entrepreneurs, they just don't want to either take the time or pay the money to make this plan. But if you did the plan for your estate and your family and protecting them this way, why aren't you also protecting them this way? Like, this is almost just as important.
At least.
Maybe, if not
Actually,
more.
it's probably more complicated, too.
It's way more complicated.
Because it's one thing to say, okay, I'll take over the home, or I know he'd want to sell this, or I don't want his motorcycle as this. But to figure out the business side of thing when you don't have anything to do with it, it's not fair. It's actually
not.
Very selfish.
It's very
because
selfish.
That's a nightmare for the spouse or even maybe the other partner to have to deal with that stuff because it wasn't thought ahead of time.
I mean, I can give you numerous examples. General contractors who have performance or payment bonds because they do government contracts. I've had this situation. Client was forced to finish contracts in an industry that she knew nothing about. I mean, can you imagine? And I mean, I had to sit with her and hear how awful it was for her to have to do this work that she didn't know. She didn't manage construction crews. Like, all of a sudden, she goes from a stay-at-home mom to a construction crew manager, and she knows nothing about it. And on top of knowing nothing about it, to know that if you don't do this, your personal assets are subject to liability because your husband passed away unexpectedly in the middle of a construction contract. Disastrous. I mean, it's a disaster.
Bad when you know what you're doing or doing.
I've got Don doing construction for 90 days. He's ready to shoot himself.
Yes.
Of course, because it's a lot of work, and that's the thing. If you're, it really, I think sometimes people think that they're really well organized and they've got it planned out. But
now, first of all, you picked like the worst industry in the world. Contractors are not really well organized.
Awful.
They're awful.
I mean, they're great people, but just their organization is not usually there.
No, because most of them started with skilled labor, right? They were good with their hands, and then they grew into this business.
We also know that some of them are like it because there's really no accountability.
Yeah.
But I have machine shops where this has happened.
Where machine shops have a bunch of actual physical assets.
Right. I had a lawyer who passed away, and guess what? The trustee didn't know that you can't just throw away the lawyer's files. The files have to be dispensed with properly because there was later an action related to one of those files, and we didn't have those files because those files had been destroyed by an uninformed trustee early on. That's the other thing. Trustees notoriously, if they're beneficiaries, try to do this work on their own without guidance from a lawyer, and notoriously do it completely wrong. It's just they think that they're doing it right, but there are unique issues in ending the life of another that really need to be, make sure that you're covering all your bases. If that particular client had been able to be advised, would have known that those files needed to be preserved. Absolutely not the trustee's fault, but you have the pressures of the other beneficiaries saying we want as much cash as possible. I mean, you're trying to keep a lot of people happy, and it's a lot of work, and it's a miserable job at times.
Yeah, so you just touched on something that Craig Davis actually said to me the other day that was pretty impactful, and I don't know if you realized it was going to be impactful, but it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Correct.
And I think that with the trustee, it's that way. It's like, it's not your fault that this happened, but it's your responsibility to do it right.
Right.
And so that's why a lot of clauses I know in trust actually have pay for trustees that are third parties that are not not necessarily parents or children or whatever. And I think that helps them with the loss of time and effort to see, okay, I'm getting compensated for this.
Absolutely. And that's why in most trusts there's compensation provisions as well as the ability to employ professionals. The reason that those employment of professionals are in there is not just the lawyer's nefarious attempt to get paid for this after the fact. It's actually because you legitimately need advice. I can't tell you how much sibling rivalry is revealed upon the passing of a parent.
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
I mean, it's
they stop
really
talking a lot of times, yeah. I've seen it with my sister's family.
It's always the most fascinating thing to me to see that there is this pot of money that has been gifted to you. You have no right to it by virtue of just being alive, and yet it becomes the catalyst to ruin relationships among siblings. It is a devastating thing. It's something that we see all the time. You add in the stress of a business and trying to sell a business or trying to maintain a business's value with people who have no idea how to run the business, and you have just begged for your family to have problems. And that's why business succession planning is so critical.
Well, that's why I was saying two things. One is that obviously by not doing as the business owner or the key person who runs the business, not having a succession plan is very selfish.
It is very selfish.
And it's stupidity because you just gave up a lot of the assets you just earned and worked for 30, 40, 50 years potentially, or maybe generations.
Right.
And two, the key thing is we've also brought up numerous pitfalls. I mean, 15 pitfalls. If you haven't been paying attention, we've already gone over about 19 reasons why you should be, looking into succession planning. But the other thing that was nice is working with a professional like you, and we're here with Lisa Odom with Pool and Shaftry out here in Valencia, California. And what's nice is you've helped Gino and I because you ask questions we don't think about asking. That's the beautiful thing about working with a professional. Even if Gino and I wanted to set something up and go, hey, I'll do this, you do that, you'll bring up 10 other questions like, oh.
It's like an infomercial. But wait, there's more.
Yes.
And it just happens. It happens naturally, right? Because now even I start asking myself questions. Oh, what about this? And shouldn't we add that? And then, we even talked about, and then next time they transfer title, it needs to be transferred this way.
Right.
And your insurance needs to be labeled like this. So there's all facets of your life that are influenced by just making these few changes.
And you, just like when you leave, so after someone gets an estate plan, I always joke that nobody leaves and say, gee, wish I hadn't done that.
Right.
Business succession planning is really very much the same. Your family is going to be protected. I think one of the things we talked about on the break was that that preserving the value of a business beyond 1 or 2 generations is very, very difficult. I mean, if you do these things in advance, there's a possibility that you have created a really long-lasting legacy. I mean, I know you're not going to be there to experience it, but how awesome is it if your kids get to experience it and then their kids get to experience it? And that's your legacy. I mean, if you think about, the old-fashioned the Carnegies and the Rockefellers and things like that. I mean, not all those families made it.
Right, yeah.
There were some disasters amongst them.
A lot of disasters.
Most were disasters.
Yeah.
But some have long-lasting legacies that have withstood the test of time. And that was because proper planning was done and there was thoughtful and careful consideration into how these could best be preserved for the future generations.
No, I'll tell you, so a good example of that is publicly traded companies.
Mm-hmm.
Publicly traded companies do a better job of this than almost anybody. I mean, Apple's still here today, right, with no Steve Jobs?
Right.
Right? That continues on. Really, Bill Gates has no involvement in Microsoft whatsoever anymore, and it continues on.
Right.
You don't even have to die. You could just step away from it, and it can continue without you. That's successful business planning, right? Right,
and and that also speaks to a business issue. One of the things that we get to see, I really like to get to know my entrepreneur clients because obviously, as you guys know, you have lots of energy. Entrepreneurs are great to work with, tons of energy, tons of excitement, enthusiasm about everything they do. Always thinking outside of the box. And, oh my goodness, I totally lost my train of thought.
It happens.
You like working with entrepreneurs.
I love working with entrepreneurs because they're always, what was I going to say?
Oh, well, it happens.
You can slice that?
Yeah, we'll work it out.
Yeah.
So anyways, I mean, look, here's the thing. Every different business is going to have a different possibility of whether it can go on or not.
Right.
That's something we talk about a lot is that not every business can go on without its owners. So
Right.
if you've created all the goodwill at Joe's hardware shop,
Right.
if Joe is gone, does the hardware shop still succeed with Dawn in place?
Right.
And that's something to consider. So as you're working your business, not not when you die, but as you're working your business, start thinking about, what do I need to do for this to keep working if I'm not here?
Exactly. And in doing that, most entrepreneurs who actually take the time to do this business succession planning and really come up with a strategy can also come up with systems to make it so that, number one, hopefully they're working less. Like, they're able to systemize some of their processes to make it so that anyone can step in. I've been listening to a book about the entrepreneurial operating system right now. I've been listening to audibles about it, and we've been implementing it within our own transactional group in our firm. And I can't believe how much headway we've made, how much growth we have done, and how much more free time I've had by virtue of simply making sure everyone knows what needs to be done and that there is a process by which we handle it. I mean, it's been a massive overhaul on our
What's
end.
that book again?
Traction by Gene Wickman.
All right, we talked
really
about
good.
it at the gym. I know.
It has changed my life, and it's changed several of my clients'
We're working on
lives.
that ourselves. I mean, it is imperative. We're trying to systemize more stuff so that we can each do what we're supposed to be doing and not the minutia.
It's interesting though,
Exactly.
because in our business we tried to systematize it all, and then we realized you had to back it off a little bit and
Right.
leave some element of freedom. Because if you
Absolutely.
ultra systematize, sometimes it doesn't work in every business. Now,
No.
it might be great at McDonald's where the burger's the same every single time,
Right.
but not all businesses are like that.
Right.
Yeah, ours is a little more dynamic than
It's
that.
dynamic, right? You know?
And I think all professional industries are, and that's what makes professional industries really difficult to transition, because so much of the referrals that you get are based on relationship building. And when you have a relationship with someone and you can trust them, that's who you go to. So it's very difficult. Like, if a client has a relationship with me, as you guys know, you probably are going to pick me over someone else on my team if you got to choose.
Oh, we
anytime.
definitely go to Lisa Odom. We don't just go to Pool and Shaffrey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You go to me. And so because of that, it's like really hard to find in the professional services industries to find ways of preserving that goodwill that has been generated by the relationship building that you have done, so that someone could step in down the road and see the value that your book of business has, even though you might not be in the mix.
Or you might just have to be willing to accept the fact that you can't.
Right.
And there's going to be no way to save it, and then it has to be liquidated.
Right.
Or it's not going to be liquidated, it's just going to die on the vine, and your life insurance policy needs to be twice as large to cover that, because there's going to be no revenue dished
Right.
out. So there's just other tools and ways to plan around
Yes.
it. At the end of the day, I know it sucks, but wake up one day and say, if I died today,
What
happens? And who,
And am I prepared?
and who,
Am my
what,
family
when, where,
prepared?
if,
are
how.
my employees
Right.
prepared? I mean, you got to take care of them too. Like, we love our staff.
Right.
So to leave them high and dry would affect so many families
Oh, for sure.
over and over. So if it's protected and we protect them, then we're doing our job, and we're actually being the good people we say we are being, is saying, oh, we love you and we respect
Right.
you and we care for you. Well, prove it.
Right. And also, one of the big things is that you have these great employees. You want to keep your great employees. And as you get closer and closer to retirement, they're going to get closer. They're going to be realizing, wow, how much longer are they realistically working here? What happens? What happens if they're gone? I mean, these are issues that we have to think about all the time.
So I
And-
know. Maybe the analogy's right, maybe it's wrong. But would you wake up today and abandon your family? Would you wake up today and abandon your job?
Right.
That's how it is when you die.
That's a good way
You
to look at it.
abandon it,
And
and
you
you
don't-
don't have a choice.
Right. And unless you are dying of some awful disease, chances are you never saw it coming. And so
Most of the time, I would imagine that's the case.
it really is. Most people, even if they die of natural causes, they don't know they're going to die.
Unfortunately, I'm getting a little older than Gino, but I do have friends that, at my age group, and we're talking 50s, and that's all. But I got friends dropping away at 49, 50, 52, and out of the blue. It happens.
I was at a wedding a few weekends ago up in Napa, and a friend of mine's mom was killed in a car accident. Right after the last wedding event. I couldn't believe it. Like, shocking. I'm still shocked to this minute about it. So
And those things happen every day, right? Car accidents.
Oh.
I mean,
Gosh.
such a simple thing.
Right.
And it's acceptable. We know it happens, and so we don't talk about it a lot. But the reality is, it happens a lot more than people think.
Right. I mean, and when it happens to someone close to you, like my uncle was killed in a car accident 3 years ago, and now my friend's mother-in-law was just killed in a car accident. Neither of those people woke up that morning thinking that that was their last day.
Sure.
And that's the hard. It's really hard when you're grieving it because you really had zero ability to say goodbye. But you also have zero ability to try to plan. Unlike someone who's diagnosed as awful as a cancer diagnosis is, at least you might have some time to plan. These people had no time to plan. It was just going to happen one way or the other, and they didn't even know it was coming. They're awful. Death is awful either way. But when someone is prepared and it's their family your family needs to grieve. It's really important that they grieve, and it's really difficult to grieve when they're trying to figure out how to not have all of the employees quit so that they can keep the value of the business, and how to run a business that they maybe have never even worked in.
How are they going to have income coming in and so forth and
Absolutely. And you still have payroll obligation. I mean, you cannot just stop doing anything because the person dies. You have to keep this ship going. And how do you keep it going when you really don't know much? So, I mean, like I said, it's another area of the law where it's a pleasure to work in because nobody's ever going to think, gee, I wish I hadn't done that. It's a great thing for everyone. It helps your employees have security. It helps you know what's going to happen. It gives your family peace of mind. And it has the possibility of even creating a legacy down the road for your next of kin, which most people give to their children and their grandchildren. So the next of kin, the legacy piece is a huge component of natural desires of parents. So,
well, obviously we scraped the surface of something that's super, super important, and most of the time probably never even thought of.
No.
So I think that a lot of value in what we talked about today, Lisa. Lisa, how do they get a hold of you? What's the best way?
So they can call Pool and Shaffrey at 661-290-2991. We have a website at www.poolshaffrey.com, and or you could email me. So you can click on the link in my bio and email me directly. So.
And so don't be scared of Lisa. She makes things super easy. Start with your trust if you haven't done that.
Yes,
Yelling at you if you haven't done that.
Hashtag probate sucks.
Yeah.
Do it for your family. Just don't be selfish. Take the time and effort. I know every time we do, it always makes us feel that much better, that much more prepared. And also it clears that side of your brain to just do what you want to do best, which is either run your business, be with your family, and make people happy. So great stuff as always, Lisa. We love having you on the show. Again,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're always awesome.
Thank you.
You look great.
Thank you.
And love having you on the show. And thank you for enlightening us and guiding us to personal and financial wellness. You've done a great job for us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for always helping me, too.
All right. And then, of course, you can see more great interviews like this. You'll see this interview, thanks to Furman. He's going to put this on our YouTube channel. Great stuff. Go to donandgino.com. Thanks for being part of the Don and Gino Show.